It was late 2016. A U.S. diplomat stationed in Havana, Cuba, was getting ready for bed. And then it started. A sound. High-pitched, piercing, coming from a specific direction, almost like it was aimed at him. A pressure built inside his skull. His vision blurred. He felt his balance go. He moved to the other side of the room. The sound stopped. He stepped back. It started again. By morning, something was wrong with his brain. And it would stay wrong. Over the following months, American diplomats and CIA officers across Havana began reporting the same experience. The same sound. The same pressure. The same cascade of neurological symptoms. Headaches that lasted for months, memory loss, difficulty concentrating, a ringing in the ears that never went away. Some were medically evacuated. Some were forced into early retirement. Some will never fully recover. The U.S. government launched one of the most secretive medical and intelligence investigations in modern American history. And what they found, or more precisely, what they tried very hard to make sure the public never found out, is the subject of this video. The first cases. The first documented cases emerged in late 2016, the final months of the Obama administration, among U.S. personnel stationed at the American Embassy in Havana. Diplomats and intelligence officers began quietly reporting to medical staff that they were experiencing sudden, acute episodes triggered by an invisible, localized source. They described hearing a penetrating, directional sound, sometimes like a loud cricket or cicada, sometimes more like a high-frequency tone. That appeared to follow them in their homes and hotel rooms, then stop the moment they relocated. The symptoms that followed were not mild. Severe headaches, vertigo, nausea, visual disturbances, cognitive impairment, memory gaps, an inability to concentrate that persisted long after the auditory episodes ended. The State Department began investigating. They expelled Cuban diplomats from Washington. Cuba denied all involvement. The FBI was brought in. The CIA set up a dedicated unit. And the early medical assessment, the one that shaped everything that followed, was alarming. The first physicians to examine the affected personnel noted that their symptoms were consistent with traumatic brain injury. Not concussion from an impact. Brain injury from an unknown external source. The working hypothesis, from the very beginning, was a directed energy weapon. Something that could be pointed at a building, penetrate the walls, and damage the human brain inside. Silently, invisibly, leaving no trace. This was not science fiction. The concept of using microwave or radio frequency energy as a weapon had been studied since the Cold War. The Soviets had reportedly targeted the U.S. Embassy in Moscow with microwave radiation for decades, an operation discovered in the 1960s and eventually linked to health complaints among embassy staff. The phenomenon even had a name: the Moscow signal. Now, it seemed, something similar might be happening again. 60 years later, in a different city, and this time, the U.S. government could not look away. It spreads. Cuba was just the beginning. By 2017, similar reports were coming in from CIA officers stationed in Moscow. Then from Vienna, Austria. Then from Guangzhou, China, where a U.S. consulate employee was medevaced after reporting identical symptoms. Then from Colombia. From Uzbekistan. From Australia. By 2021, over 1,000 American government employees, diplomats, intelligence officers, military personnel, FBI agents, White House staff had formally reported experiencing what the U.S. government was now calling anomalous health incidents, or HIs. Among the locations, CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, and at least twice on the grounds of the White House itself. The scale of this was no longer deniable. Whatever was happening, It was happening across 3 continents, in some of the most secure facilities on American soil, targeting some of the most protected individuals in the U.S. government. Former CIA officer Mark Poulos reported being struck in a Moscow hotel room in 2017. He woke up in the middle of the night with violent vertigo, the room spinning, head pressure, nausea. He flew back to the United States and spent the next 3 years fighting debilitating migraines. He was eventually forced out of a career he had dedicated his life to. They failed to properly investigate the attacks, he later said, then cooked the books analytically, while also launching a campaign to belittle the victims and denying them medical care. That phrase, "cook the books," will matter later. The CIA's investigation and what it actually did. In 2021, the CIA established a dedicated unit to investigate anomalous health incidents, the Global Health Investigation Cell, or GHIC. On paper, its mission was to get to the bottom of what was harming American personnel around the world. In practice, according to a senior CIA officer who was inside the unit, a man named Carlton Thorne, who has since resigned and gone public, its actual mission was something very different. Thorne described the unit's internal philosophy this way: there is no bottom, because there is no Havana. The geek's purpose, he said, was to bring down the temperature on anomalous health incidents at CIA headquarters, to make the issue go away. The phrase used internally, he said, was, "There is no there." In 2023, the CIA released its official assessment. The conclusion: it was very unlikely that a foreign adversary was responsible for any of the reported incidents. The causes, the agency suggested, were more likely environmental factors, pre-existing conditions, or stress. The victims were, once again, being told the problem was in their heads. And the intelligence community largely fell in line. 5 of the major agencies agreed. The diagnosis was clear. Anomalous health incidents were not a weapon. They were not an attack. They were, in the official language, a mystery with no foreign nexus. But a small number of people inside the system were not convinced, and they started keeping records. The House Intelligence Committee fights back. In late 2024, the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence released an interim report on anomalous health incidents. The committee had conducted 48 interviews, current and former officers from the CIA, FBI, OD&I, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the U.S. military. They reviewed more than 7,500 pages of official records, and more than 3,400 pages provided by whistleblowers. Their conclusion was explosive. The committee found that it appeared increasingly likely that a foreign adversary was behind at least some of the cases. More than that, they accused the intelligence community of stonewalling, slow-walking, and cherry-picking of information throughout its investigation. The committee chair, Representative Rick Crawford, was unambiguous. The Biden administration and IC leadership sought to hinder the subcommittee's investigation into HIs to keep the truth from Congress, and by extension, from the American public. This is unacceptable. For the victims who had spent years being dismissed, medically neglected, and professionally sidelined, this was the first official acknowledgement that something had been deliberately buried. But the most significant revelation was still coming: the device. In 2024, quietly, covertly, using $15 million in Pentagon funding, agents from Homeland Security Investigations conducted an undercover operation. They purchased a weapon off the black market. Not a hypothetical weapon, not a prototype. A functional, operational device purchased from a complex Russian criminal network. And what they bought changed the entire conversation. 3 independent sources, confirmed by both CBS News' 60 Minutes and the investigative outlet The Insider, described the device in detail. It is portable, small enough to fit in a backpack. It is designed to be concealed. It does not look like a weapon. It operates silently. It does not produce the heat signature of a traditional microwave oven. It can be operated remotely. Its beam has a range of several hundred feet. It penetrates windows. It penetrates drywall. And its vital components. The core technology at the heart of this device were made in Russia. The CIA had spent years telling victims, congressional investigators, and the American public that a device capable of causing the kind of damage described by HI patients was implausible. That a microwave weapon powerful enough to injure a human brain would need to be the size of a truck. That argument was now gone. The CIA always claimed that none of this technology even existed. Former CIA officer Mark Polymerpoulos said when the news broke. They based their entire analytic assumptions on this. So their assumptions are now blown up. The Pentagon began testing the device on animals at a US military base. Rats and sheep. Controlled exposures. Monitored biological responses. And one key concern, according to multiple sources, if this technology is available on the Russian black market, if criminal networks are selling it, it may have already proliferated. Other countries, other actors. The weapon, if it is a weapon, may no longer belong to just one adversary. The Russian connection. The question of Russian involvement has always been at the center of this story. And the evidence, while not conclusive, is not nothing. In 2024, a joint investigation by 60 Minutes, The Insider, and the German publication Der Spiegel identified 2 cases with direct evidence implicating members of GRU Unit 29155. Russian military intelligence, the same unit responsible for a documented series of poisonings and bombings across Europe, including the 2018 Novikov attack in Salisbury, England. One case occurred in Frankfurt, Germany in 2014, the other in Tbilisi, Georgia in 2021. In the Tbilisi case, an American nurse, the wife of a U.S. Justice Department attaché, reported experiencing a sudden, acute piercing sound and intense head pressure while she was at home. That same day, she had observed a man she didn't recognize lingering outside her residence. She later positively identified him as Albert Aversano, the son of the commanding general of GRU Unit 29155. CIA station investigators in Tbilisi subsequently confirmed that Aversano had traveled to Georgia during that period. This is not proof. One data point, even a striking one, is not a pattern. The intelligence community has pointed to sensitive reporting that continues to point away from foreign involvement across the broader range of cases. But here is what is not in dispute. A Russian-origin device capable of producing the reported effects has been physically acquired and is being tested by the U.S. military. 2 intelligence agencies have revised their assessments to say there is a roughly even chance such a device could have already been used against American personnel. The House Intelligence Committee has formally accused the CIA of covering up evidence. And the intelligence community's own former investigators have gone public on the record, saying the conclusion of no foreign nexus was manufactured. Why cover it up? The hardest question in this entire story is not whether a weapon exists. It is not even whether Russia used it. The hardest question is, why would the US government work to suppress the answer? A former CIA officer offered the most direct explanation on record. If we acknowledge that this was a state actor, that this was a directed attack, it is essentially a declaration of war against the United States, which has to have a response. And I don't know that the appetite was there to respond to the Russians at that time. Read that again. The suggestion from inside the intelligence community is that the cover-up was not about the evidence. It was about the consequences of the evidence. Acknowledging a covert Russian attack on American government personnel, on American soil, inside the White House perimeter would demand a response that no administration at the time was prepared to give. And so, the official position became, there is no there. The victims paid the price. The close. As of early 2026, here is where the Havana Syndrome story stands. Over 1,500 American officials have reported anomalous health incidents. More than 300 have qualified for formal medical care through the military health system. A backpack-sized Russian component device has been acquired by the US government, tested on animals, and briefed to congressional intelligence committees. The results of those tests are classified. The House Intelligence Committee has formally accused the CIA of a cover-up. The intelligence community's official position, that a foreign adversary is very unlikely responsible, is under active review by the new Director of National Intelligence. A former Army lieutenant colonel who led the Pentagon's own investigation into these cases said that the bar for proof had been set impossibly high. And that it was set that way intentionally because the country didn't want to face the hard truths. He was right about one thing. The truths are hard. A weapon that the government said couldn't exist has been found. Personnel who were told their injuries weren't real have documented brain damage. And an intelligence agency that is supposed to protect American officers around the world spent years and millions of dollars building a case for why it didn't need to. The sound that started in Havana in 2016 is still reverberating. And the people who heard it, the ones who are still standing, are still waiting for someone in a position of power to finally, officially say, "We believe you." Havana Syndrome is still unfolding. This story is not over. If you want to be the first to know when we cover the next development, subscribe now. And drop a comment. Do you think this was a Russian weapon, a mass psychological event, or something the government is still hiding? Tell me what you think. I read every comment.